Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. First things first, guys, make sure you smash the like, subscribe if you're new around here, and as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing Chelsea and their search for a new number 9, going through the options we've been linked with, who would be the best, who would suit us best, and and then coming to our overall conclusion on who we think will be the best option to come in this summer. Delighted to be joined by Connor for this one, mate. Thanks for coming. Welcome to the channel. Great to have you on board for a video. Let's dive straight into it, mate. Obviously, we know we're going to sign a centre forward this summer. We should have probably signed one last summer. Nicholas Jackson, in fairness to him, has actually done pretty well this season, a lot better than I think a lot of us expected him to do. And I think he can definitely develop into a very good player for us. But we can't get away from the fact that we are desperate for a prolific number 9, someone that can come in and do the business right now. Having said that, football is evolving a little bit. There's very few out and out 9s, on the market. A lot of more of it is wide players that can play centrally or central players that can also play wide. It's more versatile forwards. The game seems to be going that way, and the number 9 seems to be dying out a bit. But there are 3 or 4 that we've been linked with, the likes of Victor Osimhen, Benjamin Sesko, Ivan Toney, and of course Victor Gyokeres as well. Let's start with Victor Gyokeres because this was someone that was at Coventry in the Championship last season, scored a lot of goals, was clearly too good for that level, but he was available for about 20 million quid. Now, if Chelsea had been tracking him before he went to Sporting Lisbon, why did we not just go for him last summer, perhaps instead of Nicholas Jackson? He's obviously gone to Sporting Lisbon, and fair play to him. He's done phenomenal. His numbers are ridiculous. I think he's got 50 GNA in 40 games in all comps this season. He's scored 36 goals, 22 in the Portuguese league. He's done exceptionally well. Now, my one concern with Gyokeres is price at 100 million euros, release clause 88 million pounds, and secondly, I don't want to discredit what he's doing, but for me personally, I'd want a bit more of a body of work behind him. I get it, you do have to take a bit of a gamble sometimes, because if you don't take that gamble, someone else will roll the dice and it might come up trumps for him. But I don't want to say anyone, but you can get any player almost can put together one good season. The big test for me is, can you then back that up the following season? I'm not asking Gyokeres to hit these numbers again, but if you can get in and around a similar figure, then you think, right, okay, this guy's the real deal. But from what you know about Gyokeres, mate, and obviously you will know a bit more than I do about him, what sort of striker is he? And do you think he would suit Chelsea well? Would he be a good option?
Yeah, so I've done quite a bit of work on Sporting this year, so I like him to begin with. I'll just start by saying I do think he's really good. But firstly, like you said, he was available a lot cheaper in the summer when he was coming from Coventry, and he was actually a striker that I said that maybe not even Chelsea, but a lot of Premier League clubs should have been looking at him, because he had a very good mould of a striker about him, and he was a very worth taking a punt on at that time, in my opinion, for a lot of teams. Sporting were the one to do it. I actually think that was probably a good move for his career, so fair enough, he's done well, and I think that has helped him. But now my issue would be the price tag being so high, and for what you get, because he is more of a channel running striker. He's putting up brilliant numbers this year, which, as you say, but as you also say, his body of work isn't as big. So we're talking off of his year at Coventry, really, and then we're talking off of this year at Sporting, where he's been really good. He runs the channels effectively. He links up play. He's very good at shifting the ball for himself to make a shot. So he's very good when he gets the ball in the box to sort of do that little one-touch shift to make a bit of space and get a shot away. He's very good at that. That's one of his highest level attributes, I would say. But in that league as well, I think you sometimes get a tiny bit more space in the box than you would in the Prem. So there's things to be said about that. Would he be able to do that as well? Because one of the most effective at sort of creating that little shift to make a bit of room for himself was Aguero. He was one of the best. So can he get to the level of Aguero in terms of that specific action to do it in the Premier League? Maybe, but that's where you'd be asking him to do that sort of action and be that sort of level. And my main thing with Chelsea for Gyokeres, and I've said this a lot, and I know some people don't necessarily agree, but I actually think that with Gyokeres, I think you can get a similar output and a similar level from Nicholas Jackson as you can from Gyokeres in terms of what you're asking for him. So you're asking him to run the channels, link up play, and do all these things that are sort of more of a natural, a modern day centre forward, as you said at the start. It's not as simple as just being a goal scorer now, so that he's more complete. And I think that is what Jackson more or less can be. I think the only things he's missing is Gyokeres is he's a bit more filled out, he's a bit bigger, and he's obviously a lot more prolific, but he's also got a few more years in his locker. He's a bit more experienced in terms of he's just been playing for a lot longer, and he's sort of gained that as he's grown up. So I think with Nicholas Jackson, if you give him that similar time to sort of build his upper body, work on that aspect with him, and then also his prolific nature in the box, I think you could almost mould a Gyokeres type out of Nicholas Jackson instead of spending 100 million on him. So that would be my thoughts on Gyokeres. I really like him, and I think I'd be so supportive of him if he did join, because I just think I think he's a wonderful player, but I would be slightly on edge to spend that much money on a profile that I think we could already make with something that we've already got.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that one. I mean, look, in terms of like the success rate from the Portuguese to the Premier League with transfers is pretty good, to be fair. More often than not, that they're hits rather than misses. It's always hard to tell what a centre forward's going to do at Chelsea, given our record has been awful. Really, only two good ones in the last 20 years in Drogba and Costa. More often than not, we get it wrong, whether we're signing the wrong character, wrong profile. We're not getting the right player for the way we're playing. But more often than not, we've got it massively wrong in the centre forward role, and we can't afford to get it wrong again. As I said, the market's not great, and Gyokeres is an interesting option. Would it be my first choice? No, he wouldn't. But I think we maybe I don't know. Maybe his profile might suit us. I get exactly your point on him with Nicholas Jackson in terms of running the channels and that. Yes, Gyokeres is going to be more polished in terms of his finishing. Is clearly a lot better. I think if you put Nicholas Jackson into Sporting Lisbon's team, he's not going to put those numbers up right yet, and that's that's to be expected given where they are at their stages of their careers. But I mean, Gyokeres' skill set. Do you see that if a move to the Premier League and Chelsea were to happen? Do you see his skill set transferring well to the Premier League?
Yeah, I do. I think it would work really well because like I said, I think he can affect all aspects of play. He can run those channels and he can link up play. If he drops out of a certain position, other players can sort of go in. He's a bit of a mold of two types of striker, because you've got your strikers like Gabriel Jesus, for example, who they love to say like, oh, they're not all about goals. They like to be part of the play and link up. He's got all of that aspect of his game. He's really good at everything. But then he also adds goals because he's a pure ball striker of a football as well. When he gets the ball in the box, he is lethal. So he's sort of a mold of you've still got the Jesus like link up and interchangeability, but then you've also got that killer instinct in the box of not of a Haaland, but of like that degree of a striker who is instinctively good in the box and he wants to score goals. So I do think he'd be really good in the Premier League. I think he'd transfer quite quickly. I don't think it would take much time at all. So I do think that is a viable option for him to come to the Premier League. I think that will be his next move, whether that's Chelsea or somewhere else. I think it will be a Premier League move for him.
No, absolutely. I think we're going to have to accept that, regardless of who it is that comes, it's going to cost a lot of money. Yes, 100 million euros release clause, 88 million quid, that's a lot. But if we're being brutally honest, whoever comes in this summer, and realistically, there's not that many cheaper options. Obviously, Sesko, who we'll come on to, does have a 43 million pound release clause, but that comes with its own problems potentially. You're going to be spending upwards of 70, 80 million pounds. We're just going to have to accept that. Whether you agree that the player's worth that much money or not, if you want a top centre forward, that's the minimum starting price. So, mate, if you had to put a rating out of 10 on how likely you think Gyokeres is to come to Chelsea and how much of a success you think he would be if he did come, what would you be saying? Let's start with, if he does come, how successful out of 10 do you reckon he could be?
If he came success-wise, I'd go 8 out of 10. I think he'd be very successful. I do think he's one of the more ready options to instantly make an impact. So yeah, I would say 8 in terms of his actual impact when he joined.
And in terms of like how good a fit he could be for Chelsea, what would you give out of 10 for that?
That would be closer to like a 5 or 6, mainly because I mentioned about Jackson. I think that's the one thing in the back of my mind where I'm thinking, if we're going to go and spend that big money on a striker, in my opinion, I don't think that's the type I'd be going to, just because I think we might already have one at home if we was to put more time into him as a project. And because I've liked what he's done this year as well, Jackson, I will say that. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that one. Probably about a 5 or 6.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. I hear it. I hear it. I wouldn't be dead against it. Certainly not as against it as I was when the murmurings first started coming. I was thinking, that absolutely no way. But now I've kind of swung a bit more round towards it. We'll have to wait and see what happens. It's definitely an interesting one to watch for sure. Let's move on to Victor Osimhen. Obviously, the name on everyone's lips, widely expected to come to the Premier League this summer. Whether it's Chelsea or not remains to be seen. Yes, we're putting in a lot of work with Drogba, Mikel, etc., trying to convince him to join. And we do have a rich history with African players at the club. Osimhen, 24 years of age, exceptional season last season. But I'll be honest, mate. I'm not as convinced on him as perhaps a lot of other people are. I'm by no means saying that he's not a good striker. He absolutely is. Can he develop into a top striker? Yes, he can. But do I think he's as good as people make him out to be? No, I don't. Do I think he's a sort of the profile of player that Chelsea could do with? Not necessarily. I don't really think he is. Yes, got a great goal scoring record, but all the things that Osimhen is doing is what Lukaku was doing in Serie A and what we were bigging up Lukaku for doing in Serie A. Yes, obviously he's younger, slightly different, all-round game. Please say he's got a better all-round game than Lukaku. Certainly can get a few more assists. He's very good in the air, etc. But I'm just not as sold on him as being the right fit for Chelsea as we look to solve a problem that we can't afford to get wrong. I also look at the price. And again, as I mentioned on price, we have to accept that release clauses or whatever and strikers, the top ones are going to be very, very expensive. £112 million, I think the release clause, or 113. That's a lot of money to spend on someone who, yes, has got a bigger body of work behind him than a Gyokeres does, for example. But we're still really looking at one good season, which was last season when he scored all those goals. I mean, look, admittedly, this season he's been, plagued by injuries, and he's still got 13 goals, which is not terrible. I think in 20 or 25 odd appearances in all competitions. Where do you stand on him, and what are your thoughts on how he would fit into a Chelsea side? Because this is right now, this looks the most likely one.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and articulate this properly because I think a lot of people are going to. I could contradict myself here because I've been saying about the price of Gyokeres being too high, and I do think the price is too high for Osimhen. I will say that, but he would be my first choice, but it's not for the reasons of like just his out and out like who he is. It is more so like the type of striker that I think we need in terms of I think if you was to stick with Jackson and have him as a viable option next year as well, you want to sort of get in a box heavy striker where if you are going to go at any point in games, you're going to start putting more balls into the box. You're going to up the output on. You're going to start putting in more crosses, and you're trying to almost pin defenders in with that centre forward. I think for me, Osimhen is probably the best available on the market right now for that because obviously the other ones are quite like Haaland, who does it really well in the Premier League. He's obviously taken. So for me, Osimhen has that ability to occupy and take up two defenders and their responsibilities because of his gravity that they need to give him to stop him because he's so powerful, he's strong, he's quick, he's very aggressive like when the ball does come into the box. So I really like the idea of it. However, he has had some injuries, so that's something to take into account for the money.
Fits him perfectly then, doesn't he?
Exactly. He's Chelsea made already. But it's just I really do think it could work and it would be where I'd go, but I do understand a lot. I do really resonate with the caution about it because it's another £100 million striker. As you said, Lukaku was supposed to do this as well. He was supposed to be this gravity pulling striker who was going to hold things up, but also sometimes running behind. He was basically everything that we actually wanted from a number 9 in terms of skill set. But then obviously that went downhill with the interview and stuff. I actually do believe that he probably would have done all right for us really and been scoring goals. Even before his interview, he had shown glimpses of doing what we wanted him to do. So it's just a shame that he went and did the interview, and obviously that all went from there. But in terms of what we want, I'd say Osimhen, a box striker in general, who's going to really just sort of put it to the defenders. And even if he's not creating for himself, by putting himself in the box and having 2 or 3 defenders having to go towards him just to try and stop him getting on the ball, that's then when those loose balls start dropping in and around the box. That's when you start to see the wingers, people like Mudryk, really quick, nippy onto those second balls. That's where you can start to see a little bit of effect from them, even when it doesn't look like he's the one necessarily impacting the game. He still is impacting the game just by holding off those defenders in the box. So that's where I stand.
I mean, I think something key as well with the centre forward, whoever it is how they're going to link up with Christopher Nkunku, because obviously Nkunku was meant to be, you know, our main guy this season. His injuries have ruined his whole season pretty much. We're not going to see the best of him until next season, but surely that's got to be in the thinking how the centre forward is going to link up with Nkunku. I mean, how would you potentially see Osimhen linking up with Nkunku? Because for me, Nkunku's best position is probably that number 10 or playing off the striker. Do you think those two could potentially work well together?
I think it could maybe work better with other strikers, but I do think him playing in that 10 would be possible because he'd be able to link up with Osimhen and sort of play off Osimhen when he comes in to sort of hold off a defender. That's when Nkunku can sort of spin off into the space that he's pulled the gravity with him. So he's gone and took a defender on his back and then he's laid it off to Nkunku and Nkunku's gone. This is sort of what we've seen from Jackson, though. I quite like their dynamic. So I do think maybe for Nkunku, you're looking at you want somebody who's a bit more complete who can sort of like interchange positions with him. So like that Gyokeres type. But then at the same time, Nkunku's had injury worries. So where do you start to put your where do you start to focus? Do you start to focus on integrating Nkunku and making sure he's ready? If he's injured next year, what's the plan B? Then so it's for me, it's almost a fact of what profiles do you have, what profiles don't you have, and then what profiles can you mix together. So like Jackson and Nkunku, I think that's a ready-made partnership if you can get them firing and if they can stay fit. So then what don't you have that's part of that? Oh, you don't really have a hold-up number 9 who can really take the ball under pressure in the box and just bully a defender. So that would be what puts me towards it more. But in the sense of Nkunku, I think you're most likely to see him next year in the 10 or off the left, in like coming in from the left into like a number 10. Sort of, he did sort of do that when he come back from injury this season. I think it was against Crystal Palace. He played off the
Yeah.
left. But I
But
think it's definitely doable.
yeah, I mean, I look at us and look the profile. You know, we've got someone in Nicholas Jackson who runs channels, as you mentioned. For me, I think what we're missing is a striker that's physical, can play well with his back to goal, hold up the ball, bring others into play. Someone that's just as you said, a penalty box striker. Someone that's just going to be there, and they might not touch the ball very much in the game, but that doesn't matter. You just want them to be there and to be able to finish it when the chances occur. I don't care if my striker touches the ball 10 times. If he's in those 10 times, if he's putting the ball in the back of the net twice and winning us the game, it doesn't matter. I remember that game a couple of years ago against Crystal Palace where, you know, it was run that, you know, Lukaku only had 7 or 8 touches. I don't care if the centre forward has that fewer touches. As long as the touches he has, 1 or 2 of those are going in the back of the net. So I think that's the sort of the profile we need. I don't want someone that's going to drop deep like a Harry Kane does and get involved in the other play. I think we personally need someone who's going to stay in the box most of the time, can hold up the ball well with his back to play, bring others into play, and where you really need him, he's there, whether it's in the 6-yard box to smash one home off a rebound or whatever it is, like to put the ball in the back of the net when we most need it. I just don't think we need any more of these. You know, we just need more of an old-fashioned penalty box striker. And I think Osimhen does tick those boxes, but as we said, the price is potentially a worry. I don't have any issues about him adapting to the Premier League. I think he can certainly do that. But I think, yeah, price, how he'd fit in at Chelsea. And, you just know that if he goes 1 or 2 games without scoring and he's cost over 100 million, everyone's on him. And can he deal with that pressure? We'll have to wait and see. But mate, an interesting option is Benjamin Sesko. Obviously young, a project striker, as it were, a development player still. For me, not someone that we need in terms of, not because I don't like him and don't think he's good and has got potential to be good, but it doesn't tick the boxes for what we need, which is someone to come in and make an impact right now. We've already got our project striker in Nicholas Jackson. I don't think we then need another one. Yes, the £43 million release clause for Benjamin Sesko is very appealing. Yes, there's a lot of ability there, but he's come into the Leipzig side more often now towards the sort of the second half of the end of the season, but certainly to begin with this season, he wasn't playing regularly. He's got loads of ability. He's an interesting profile, but he has only scored 7 Bundesliga goals this season, 11 in all competitions. Where do you stand on him? I mean, other than price being appealing, I mean, what are your thoughts on Sesko?
I've done a little bit less work on Sesko than the others so far. He's like the next one I sort of need to get around to doing a bit more on if things start to pick up with him. But when I've watched him quite a few times this season in the Champions League and things, his actual profile, like I like that because he's quite a big, long profile. He's like 6'4", so he's got that sort of build about him. But he's also very good at running in behind. So he's got that sort of hybrid-ish like build about him. his ball striking is very good, and he is fairly decent in the air. Maybe not as dominant in the air, but when he makes contact with the ball, his actual precision in the air in terms of aerial battles and winning balls in the air, he's very good. So that side of it I'd like. But again, I'm sort of with you. I think maybe it's a bit risky to go for him when you've already bought in Nicholas Jackson, and you'd almost be having two project type strikers against each other. A lot of people at Chelsea are already bored of the whole like having people to wait on. We've already got so many players that we're having to convince people, no, give them time because they'll progress. So I think buying more of those type of players that you have to then convince the fans to get on board with, that could almost just make more issues than we need. So I think yes, price very appealing. Yes, I like him as a player, and I do think in the future you're probably looking at a top striker. He's probably going to be one of those people. He's going to score a lot of goals. He just is. But is he the one we should go for? Probably not, if we're being sensible.
I just I don't want to say he's not ready for the Premier League, but I just think one season that he's been playing in Austria, RB Salzburg. All right, no disrespect to them, but the Austrian league is not great. Champions League, he looks decent. He does well for his country. But he's had one season at RB Leipzig, not even one season yet. To then move to the Premier League and be tasked with the guy to try and score the goals to solve Chelsea's problems. That's a lot of pressure to put on young shoulders. And, we've already got a lot of players that, need coaching, need developing, could be good in 2 or 3 years. We're asking for patience with. We don't want to then bring another one into the fold, as you say, that we're asking fans to be patient with again. We can't, at some point, we're going to have to stop adding players that could be good in 2 or 3 years' time because, we can't just keep saying this team will be good in 2 or 3 years' time and another year passes and they're not. You've got to add the right blend, and we need someone that is ready to come in now and can do the business. And Sesko just doesn't tick those boxes, unfortunately. Yes, maybe somewhere down the line he will do, but right now he's not what we're looking for. And I think it would be a mistake to sign him because then you're blocking, I say blocking, but then, you've got strikers of the same age competing for minutes that they both need, and one's going to develop at a quicker rate than the other, and you might see someone's development drop off. And that's kind of not what you want. But I mean, mate, the last one that we've kind of been linked with, but it's gone a bit colder and I don't see it happening. But I think it's someone that we should absolutely be reigniting our interest in and looking at. That's Ivan Toney. For me, he's absolutely my first choice. I think someone that's been there and done it in the Premier League, knows the league inside out, scored 20 league goals last season. Only Harry Kane and Haaland scored more than him. And that's in a Brentford side that, let's be real, doesn't create the most chances, hasn't got the best quality of players around him. You put him in a better team with better players around him. I think he's someone that could definitely do that on a regular basis. Yes, he's towards the older end of the scale, 27. There's not going to be any resale value in him, but sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and bring someone in that's going to do the job for 3 or 4 years and then move them on. He's come back from his ban and it's looked like he's not been away. I think he's done really well. His hold up play is very good. He's strong. He's powerful. He's got good pace. His finishing's great. He's good in the air, good at penalties, good from set pieces. For me, mate, he ticks all the boxes. I know people talk about his attitude potentially, but he's a leader in terms of he's been a captain at Brentford. I'm struggling to find I'm struggling to find any legitimate downsides for signing Ivan Toney. Yes, price is going to be expensive, but as we've said, you're going to be paying top dollar for a centre forward that is going to be banging in 20 goals a season. So, for me, Toney makes perfect sense. I mean, what are your thoughts on Toney and a move to Chelsea? Because I think, for example, mate, if he were to go to Arsenal, if Arsenal had him this season, for example, they win the Premier League, in my opinion. Like, that's what they're missing.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's the safest option if we're being realistic. You could probably get him for about 60. I know that there was like points where they was trying to prove, like they were trying to push it up and they were trying to almost spark a bidding war, 70, 80. Don't think that's going to happen. I think you're looking at 60 million if you're going for Toney. Again, proven goal scorer at this level, has done it. He's experienced. He adds experience to a team that is lacking experience, which we are. So that's another option. That's another factor. And just the fact that the whole character thing with his attitude for me is like, okay, like there's been some issues. Obviously, he had like the scandals and stuff off the pitch, but in terms of on the pitch, I'm sort of agree with you. I think he's more of a leader. I think players actually quite like him. He look up to him in terms of as a player. Like he seems very like he's a good leader. Like when he has captain Brentford, so I think he could also just be a good fit for the group in terms of just to help build the young squad, just have another experienced head in there that's done it in this league. So I like him. I think he'd be great. I think he'd score goals guaranteed, and I think he also sort of offers a bit more of a hybrid than someone like Osimhen, because he's probably a little bit better at linking up play, coming outside if he needs to, and somebody else dropping into his spot. He can sort of do a bit of both. He is more of a like aerial box striker. If he like, especially in a bigger team, I think he'd have even more impact in the box where he doesn't have to come and get the ball as much. But he has that ability about him to do both. The only thing I would say is, like you said as well, it's gone cold, and I think it's probably gone cold for a reason. I have a feeling that's not where they're looking, mainly because he doesn't fit the mold of what they're trying to do. That, like, in terms of, they don't want a 27-year-old striker, which, whether people believe is right or wrong, I think that's the route they're going. I personally would. I think if the fit is correct and you can get in a leadership style player who is a bit older, an experienced player, alongside this younger group, and they do fit the mold that you're trying to build, then perfect, bring them in. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they're going to go that road.
No, it doesn't, and you know that's what really frustrates me. I'm like, I don't think anyone's saying rip everything up and start again, but there's got to be an acceptance that we can deviate slightly from this plan and bring in some slightly older players, more experienced, more ready to go, to help complement what we've already got. Because I think the young forwards that we've got at the club could certainly learn a lot from Ivan Toney, and at some point we're going to have to realize that we do need to slightly deviate off track to right the wrongs and add more experience. How many games have we watched this season where we said, oh, if only we had an experience, if only we had a top class centre forward, if only we had more leadership on the pitch to help us see out games in tough moments, if only. And yet when opportunities present themselves to maybe do something about it, time and time again, we refuse to take those opportunities to do something about it. Now, I get it. They want to build a young team. They want resale value on players. But ultimately, you're going to find very few players under the age of 25 that are ready to come in and make an instant impact in the Premier League at Chelsea. I honestly think leading the line for Chelsea is one of the hardest things to do in football, And to think you're going to find a player under the age of 25 that's ready to do that and hit the ground running from the off, I just think it's so unrealistic.
Yeah, I'd agree. The only thing that you can say of that is, if you are going to go underneath, you almost need to hit somebody who's got that massive ego, but not in a bad way. I'm going to say ego. Like, they've got so much confidence in themselves, almost to come and like prove everybody wrong, take that number 9 and just rip up the script. So I think in that sense, Osimhen's probably the best fit for that, because I think he probably has the most like self-belief, in terms of he probably would come into Chelsea, he would take that 9 and he would just go with it. I don't think he'd have any sort of implication of like self-doubt with that. But again, Tony, I think, is that as well, but he's like an older version of that, and he has the experience in the league where he almost thinks that he knows he could do it. So yeah, my point with the whole experience thing is sort of, if they fit the mold. I'm not saying to go and sign experienced players that don't fit, because people also have this thing with Thiago Silva where they don't think he necessarily fits the style of play anymore, because he's like getting older and he's not able to be as aggressive with the back line. So my main thing would just be, you can still bring in experience as long as it fits the same way that you're trying to go down, and you can sort of blend it in along the way and weave it together.
No, absolutely, mate. And last thing then, mate, two-part question. One, who would you like to see us sign as a centre forward this summer, and who do you think will actually end up with?
I would like Osimhen, as I said. I think I'm just a big advocate for him. I'm fully in the boat, and I understand completely why people have their like not fully convinced on him. But for me, I just think he's the perfect blend of what we need in terms of a box striker who's just a bully. And then I think Jackson could also then develop his game, and you could have two really top strikers like the Drogba and Elka days. You could almost have two really good strikers, because I don't want Jackson to be phased out. That's another thing. I do think he's really good. So part of my decision making is, I want Jackson to be firmly in the head of being part of this squad, because I do think he has a lot to offer. Who do I think we'll get? Is I honestly think that it could end up being Sesko. The more I think about it, I think it's so written to be one of those deals that they want to do because of that 40 million release clause. It's almost, in their heads, I think it's almost too good to be true. 40 million for a 19-year-old who's got the potential to, like, if we quotation mark it, have got the potential to be a Haaland level striker. I think it's almost too good to be true for them to not go that route. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they do go for like an Osimhen or even a Tony, the more experienced route. But if I had to put money on it right now, I'd say Sesko.
Yeah, for me, as I said, Ivan Toney's my main choice for obviously all the reasons that we've discussed. Who I think we'll end up with, mate, I'm sort of in agreement with you. Look, I think absolutely Osimhen is the number one target, no doubt about it. And, you know, from what he's been saying, he's already decided where he's going. And all reports suggesting that, you know, he will be going to the Premier League, whether that's Chelsea or it could be Arsenal, it could be someone else. I don't know. I'm just not sure if we'll end up being able to pull that deal off or not, particularly if we don't qualify for Europe or if we're only playing Conference League, for example. So for me, I just got a funny feeling we might end up with Gyokeres. So I'm going to say that Gyokeres is who we'll end up with. But to be honest, it could realistically, I think we can probably discard Tony. It really could be any one of those other three. And, you know, it's quite hard to put your finger on it. But it's certainly going to be interesting to see who we do end up with. Guys, as always, let us know your thoughts in the comments, who you would like and who you think we'll end up with. Connor, thanks so much for your time, mate. It's greatly appreciated. If people want to check out more of your stuff, what you do and what not, where should they be going?
So yeah, just head over to my YouTube channel. Basically, just all things analysis in terms of trying to do as much Chelsea as I can. I'm going to start trying to peel off into other avenues as well, doing like players and teams. But I'm always trying to, even the analysis I'm doing at the minute, I'm sort of starting with the broad analysis of a team, and then I'm sort of relating it back to Chelsea. So trying to keep things going, and then I'm also trying to do more things like this, collaborate with people, and just have talk about football, because that's what I enjoy. So why not?
Yeah, guys, make sure you check out Connor's channel. Help him get to 1,000 subscribers. Not far away now, are you, mate? So, guys, I'll tag it in the title. Make sure you head over, show him some love, subscribe. And yeah, guys, I'll be back with another video soon. Up the Chelsea, and see you later.